Al-Shara claimed that the Israelis resorted to a wide-scale targeting of civilian and government facilities that would have pushed matters to a large-scale escalation. Al-Shara added that the effective intervention of American, Arab and Turkish mediation saved the region from an unknown fate. Israel launched strikes in the heart of Damascus, an escalation in a campaign that it said was intended to defend the Druze and push Islamic militants away from its borders. Al-Shara said Israel sought to break Syrian unity and turn the country into a theater of chaos, but that Syrians were rejecting division.
We were faced with two choices: open war with Israel at the expense of our Druze community and Syria's stability, or allowing Druze leaders and elders to return to reason and prioritize national interest over those who seek to tarnish the reputation of the honorable people of the mountain. We do not fear war. We have spent our lives confronting challenges and defending our people, but we chose the path of Syrian interest over chaos and destruction.
أن تشوه هذه الصورة الجميلة. شباب في عندنا قصف، شباب قصف يا شباب، خذونا على الهواء. أنا بتمتع. خليك على الأرض، خليك على الأرض، خليك على قصف جديد يا شباب، قصف جديد، مبنى هيئة الأركان خالص.
The top story we're tracking at this hour for our viewers is coming from Syria, where the Syrian army is withdrawing from violence in Suwayda. A U.S. call for government forces to leave the majority Druze southern city. Now, the Syrian government earlier announced a new ceasefire in Suwayda that would require a halt to military operations there after clashes that a war monitor said had left more than 350 people dead since Sunday.
مبنى هيئة الأركان خالص.
A wave of Israeli strikes hit the Syrian capital Damascus on Wednesday. The strikes hit next to Syrian presidential palace. The Israeli strikes also hit targets near the Syrian army and defense ministry headquarters. Now, the strikes came as Israel warned the Ahmad al-Shara-led government to leave the Druze minority alone in its Suwayda heartland. A video captured the moment a reporter was caught by surprise during a live transmission on Wednesday as Israeli jets struck the Ministry of Defense in the heart of Damascus. Several more loud explosions were heard as the team runs for cover.
شباب في عندنا قصف، شباب قصف يا شباب، خذونا على الهواء. شباب قصف بسرعة. يا شباب قصف، خذونا بسرعة بسرعة. بسرعة.
إذا استهدافنا من هيئة الأركان بشكل كامل.
The explosion in Damascus was captured live on air in another video. The strike in a high-profile area of Damascus housing important buildings can be seen engulfed in smoke after the Israeli strike. Now, hours after the strike, Syria announced a new US-backed ceasefire. A Syrian Defense Ministry statement said that its army has begun withdrawing from the city of Suwayda in implementation of the terms of the adopted agreement after the end of the sweep of the city for outlaw groups. Now, the statement did not mention any withdrawal of other government security forces which had deployed to the city. Now, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights War monitors said that the violence in Suwayda province had left more than 350 people dead, including government forces, local fighters, and 27 Druze civilians killed in summary executions. The Syrian presidency vowed to investigate the heinous acts in Suwayda and to punish all those proven to be involved. Israel, which has its own Druze community, has presented itself as a defender of the group. However, many analysts say that it is a pretext for pursuing its own military goals of keeping Syrian government forces as far away from the shared frontier as possible. Now, Turkey condemned Israel's strikes, saying that they undermine stability in the war-torn country and must stop. According to a diplomatic source, Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan told his Syrian counterpart that Israel's strikes in northern Syria and Damascus were alarming. Fidan also talked with U.S. Special Envoy from Syria, Tom Barrack, on the phone, saying that Israel's attacks on Syria and the clashes in the south must be stopped. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi also condemned the Israeli strikes, demanding an end to the unhinged aggression. Araghchi said that the strikes were all too predictable, questioning which capital was next. Now, announcing the new ceasefire on Wednesday, Syria's Interior Ministry said that there would be a total and immediate halt to all military operations, as well as the formation of a committee comprising government representatives and Druze spiritual leaders to supervise its implementation. Now, Sheikh Yusuf Jarboua, one of Syria's main Druze spiritual leaders, read out the 10 points of the accord, which also includes the full integration of the province of Suwayda into the Syrian state. Until now, Druze areas have been controlled by fighters from the minority community. Now, the clashes between the Bedouin and the Druze that first prompted the government deployment were triggered by the kidnapping of a Druze vegetable merchant. The two groups have been at loggerheads for decades since.
Well, we start with some breaking news just coming in. Syria's leader Ahmed al-Shara has slammed Israeli strikes in the country, targeting civilian and government sites in his first televised statement after the powerful Israeli airstrikes on Damascus. Al-Shara said on Thursday that those responsible for violence against Druze people would be held accountable after clashes in the southern city of Suwayda left more than 350 people dead. He said, and I'm quoting here, "We are keen on holding accountable those who transgressed and abused our Druze people." Now, he added that responsibility for security in the majority Druze Suwayda province would be handed over to elders and local factions. Al-Shara said that while his administration did not fear the war, but they are putting the interests of the Syrians before chaos and destruction. The Syrian army is withdrawing from violence-hit Suwayda after a U.S. call for the government forces to leave the majority Druze southern city. The Syrian government earlier announced a new ceasefire in Suwayda that would bring a halt to military operations there after the clashes that a war monitor said had left more than 350 people dead since Sunday. Now, a wave of Israeli strikes hit the Syrian capital, Damascus, on Wednesday. These strikes hit next to Syrian presidential palace. The Israeli strikes also hit targets near the Syrian army and defense ministry headquarters. Now, the strikes came as Israel warned the Ahmed Shara-led government to leave the Druze minority alone in its Suwayda heartland. This is the latest that we're picking up from the ground right now.
شباب في عندنا قصف شباب قصف يا شباب خذونا على الهواء شباب قصف بسرعة يا شباب قصف خذونا بسرعة بسرعة
Now, Syria says its army had begun to withdraw from the violence-hit Suwayda following a wave of Israeli strikes on the capital and a U.S. call for government forces to leave the majority Druze southern city.
Now, the Syrian government earlier announced a new ceasefire in Suwayda that would bring a halt to military operations there after clashes that a war monitor said had left more than 350 people dead since Sunday.
Now, Israel launched strikes next to Syrian presidential palace. The Israeli strikes also hit targets near the Syrian army and defense ministry headquarters. One person has been killed and 18 injured in the attack. Israel has warned the Ahmed al-Shara-led government to leave the Druze minority alone in its Suwayda heartland.